changes, and then setting the permanent appropriations. Address Finance Committee for a few minutes. We're good. Okay. Cool. So awesome. Yeah. So city finances. So essentially, we're just going to kind of run through. I'm not going to do as much as I did last time, but we'll run through the revenue report. Then I'll run through the expense report, current year only. We'll just highlight a few things here. Nothing too intensive, and then we'll look at the purchase orders that requests that have essentially things that didn't have enough appropriation. So we'll kind of take a look at that. So yeah, is there anything else that we need to address that you all have before we get started?
No, sir.
Yeah, so just want to note the auditor, Jim Stith, he's normally at these finance committee meetings. We try to have him here. He had a pre-existing engagement that he's enjoying, and so good for him. He is the one, though, that put together the 2020 appropriations and the 2019. There's a few changes to the 2019, but by and large, he did all the heavy lifting on that, so we definitely appreciate that. Okay, so looking at the revenue report, so you'll see here, like when we look at the target collected, like target percentage, we're looking at 83.33%. So that would be, 10 out of the 12 months, essentially. So when we go and look at these different ones, if the percentage is above 83%, assuming that we would get certain revenue consistent throughout the year, and most revenue is not, that's kind of one indication for how we know, if things are off balance or out of balance. And if it's above 1, then it's like, hey, it's pretty good, right? Because we've got lots of revenue. We have more revenue so far already for that specific key than we were anticipating. So, or at least more revenue than I think they built it off last year. So, okay, yeah, just key things here. So on the license and permit section, so it's that first section on the first page here. So, before we do that, earnings tax. So earnings tax, we're at 15.2 million dollars so far. So that's about 90% of where we thought we'd be. Now, just remember, the earnings tax on this specific report does not include the Paycor, any amount that we get from Paycor or Construct Connect or any of those other earnings tax agreements that we have. There's 4 of them out there. The amount that we would refund back to them next year is not included here. So those go into a separate fund. So you'll see a discrepancy, between this report and what the treasurer sends out, because the treasurer includes all of that on his report. So, so that's that. So so earnings tax is looking good. The other part down here I look at is building permits. So that's the second from the last item. So that's still down from last year. It's at 76%. So, but that's still, I think they rebounded a little bit because it was looking worse earlier during the summer. So there just haven't been a lot of big buildings that have been built this year, or at least that have been started this year. So the hub building at Xavier, like you prepay all your building permit fees when you first, apply or you're granted. In that way, they don't have to, you don't have a building half constructed and the city's arguing with you over paying your, the rest of your fees. So let's see. This next one, we're looking at hotel lodging tax. So that's 48378. So that one we were expecting $233,000. Actual so far this year is $326,000. So that's $93,000 more than we were, originally budgeting for. So that's a definite positive. Okay, and then property tax, just want to note that as well. So that's 48370. That's a little bit above hotel tax. We were anticipating 2.7 million. We actually got in 2.6 million. So it's like about 96% of what we thought we would get, but it was down. So by about $111,000. And then the other item I wanted to make sure you all knew is in our street fund. So that would be on page 4. So it's like 2/3 of the way down, 48365, 48366. So essentially are the intergovernmental revenues. So we were expecting 565,000. So far already this year it's 560,000 that we've gotten in. So that's 99% of what we had already expected to get in, but we get that in monthly. So that's kind of the gas tax increase that went into effect. So the good thing about the next council is just that they're going to have more money for streets, and so is the city administration. So we're already kind of seeing that extra money starting to trickle in. So that's kind of exciting for me. Is there any other items that you all wanted to note on our revenue report?
No, thank you, James. Good work.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think that's probably good there. We went through, if anybody wants to see a more detailed thing, our last finance committee meeting, we went through it pretty comprehensively. Before we look at any expense reports, you should also have a cash position report. So it's the one that's it's a two-pager, just front and back. It says statement of cash position with month to date. Just the one item I wanted to note here is or two items really. The street Fund 2, M&R. So we started the year $553,000 in our street fund. That was a carryover from last year. We've received $570,000, and after encumbrances, the total ending balance right now is $660,000. So I think that the city administration, from my understanding, has encumbered everything that they're planning on doing for streets this year. So what it's looking like, and we've talked about this before. I mean, I've mentioned it on council floor. I think I mentioned it in the little NCT speech thing that I had to give. But essentially, it's going to be a carryover for the next mayor. So right now it's $660,000. If we get about $84,000 in per month, we've got 2 more months left. I mean, so that's about 170 more. I mean, that's almost $800,000 or a little bit over $800,000 that will be the next mayor will have to jumpstart whatever they want to do with streets. So,
wow.
And that's, I mean, part of that, I mean, a lot of that's because of the fiscal responsibility that we've taken here. And then also, I mean, the current mayor did not do as many street projects as I think we were expecting. So either way, whatever it is, there's still going to be money left over. So there'll be, if you count the $700,000 that we're going to pass on, and then let's say here, this 84,000 times 12. And it looks like next year I'm expecting to be close to $900,000, I would say, in street fund revenue. So that's $1.6 million or so for streets next year. So, you know, there is going to be some good things coming. The money's going to be there. So just want to make sure that you all knew that that was still there, that hasn't gone anywhere. I know we've been talking about it all year, that it, you know, we've got that street fund money, and so it's still looking good. So we'll keep our eye on it.
Nice job.
Yeah. Well, don't. Hey. The other item I wanted to note here is our water fund. So it's the top one on page 2 of this. So, you know, we had the, I'll say, issue. I mean, it wasn't anything that we did. We've been asking questions about this for the past 2 years, but you know, where the water fund, essentially there was $3 million in the sewer fund that should have been in the water fund. And you know, I still get people bickering at me that, oh, you should be blaming this person or you should be blaming that person. And honestly, I don't know who to blame. I truly don't know who to blame. And I don't want to, I'm not trying to blame anybody, but I don't know who's responsible for getting it, because I'm getting told by all these different people. And usually it's people in one political party that want to blame people in another. And, you know, I mean, it is what it is. And I don't know where it came from. However, just want to make sure you all note that our current cash balance in the water fund, because it's going to be important when we look at appropriations in a minute, it's $1.8 million there. So just kind of keep that in mind, because we were keep that in mind. So as we look at when we talk about appropriations, talk about what we have to do there, we have the balance here in the water fund. And because we started with a smaller balance, because we started in a negative balance, it reduced the amount that we could originally appropriate, because we appropriate based off our certificate of estimated resources. Well, we knew about how much we were going to take in, which is what it should, about how much we're going to pay out, right? So it's where it should be. However, because we started in the negative, we had to subtract that negative balance off what we appropriated for the water fund. So in a minute, we're going to go and look at the water fund appropriations. But I wanted to make sure that we point that out, that we started in the negative, and that really hurt us when it comes to how much that we were able to appropriate. So, yeah, any questions on that yet? I'm sure there will be questions in a minute, but okay, cool. Awesome. So let's go ahead and actually look at the 2019 appropriation. So I am going to just read that one out loud. I didn't have a chance to post it online, so anybody watching, sorry, I will get that posted online sometime tonight. Let's see here. And unfortunately, when I printed it, I did not print it on a legal size paper, so I'm losing it. Do you have a copy of that? The one that's not labeled, so it should be 2019.
Are you looking at your expense account?
No, this one's one. Yes, that one there. Yeah. There should be one on Mr. Thompson's desk too. Yeah, it's right underneath that. I don't. Okay, we'll share this one. Thank you, Mr. Clark, for, it's lost here somewhere. Okay, just printed it though. Okay, so, so the 2019 appropriations, there's not a ton of changes, but I will go through each one here. I'll start with the decreases first, just so we can get those out of the way. So all of these decreases, except for the sewer fund, are from like TIF type funds. So basically our bond council reviews every year, reviews the amount of revenue expected or amount of revenue received, and some of these are lower than what we were expecting, but all of that gets taken into account. It doesn't mean the city's in any bad position. It's just the way that property taxes came in this year. So the decreases in the permanent appropriations, Fund 37, Linden Point TIF, $25,607. Fund 75, Central Park School Fund, decreased $344,000. Cornerstone TIF School Fund, that's Fund 84, decreased $5,000. Rookwood Debt Payment, Fund 91, will decrease that $408,000. Danamont TIF, which essentially Dana Montgomery, the University Station area, that's 94. Fund 94, $621,000, and then the Danamont School Fund, which is essentially the amount that we pay to the schools. It's the fund that we use to reimburse the schools for property taxes that they miss out on because of the TIF. We're going to decrease that $19,388. And again, those ones specifically all come from bond council, so it doesn't really affect anything that we do. It's just that we need to get those appropriations reduced. So. The other one to reduce here, it's the sewer fund. It's $2,464,000 because we appropriated the full amount that was in there at the beginning of the year, and some of that money shouldn't have been in there, as we just discussed. So, for any questions on the decreases? Okay. So for the increases, the 48, the capital improvements fund, that $452,000. So that is basically just a pass-through fund, and it's not money that's going to get spent. It's essentially we have to. It's from one of the grants, either Forest Avenue or Highland. There's some grant that we'd received, and even though that we didn't pay, so instead of some grants, what happens is somebody pays the city pays the grant. The people doing the work. Well, in these specific ones, the city didn't actually pay that. The grantee paid directly to the contractor, but we still have to mark it as we still have to kind of pass it through so that it's for audit purposes and other reasons that it's shown that the city did receive that level of benefit, the $452,000 of benefit, but there won't be the spending. Like if you were to look in the balance of that fund, there should be a zero cash balance of it. Fund 40, so Fund 48 has right now zero cash balance. So there's no money will be spent there, just to make sure you all know that. So then the other two increases would be for water. So the contractual would be increased $1,460,634, and then materials and supplies would be $4,000. So we're not going to. So basically, the contractual basically pays the water bill to Cincinnati. We've got the not sufficient. So one of these papers I gave you was we talked about the not sufficient funds paper. So essentially, that it's where there was not enough money appropriated for whatever bills or something that came in. So you'll see the second one there. They have it marked urgent ! And another 3 exclamation points. with lots of stars, to let us know that like they really need to have that appropriated for the water fund. So, and again, part of this is because at the beginning of the year we were projected to be in a negative balance, so they had to subtract that negative from the amount that we could appropriate, because we can only appropriate up to our estimated resources. So we were always going to have to deal with this at the end of the year, but thankfully that we are dealing with it because of the money was, it was kind of found that it was kind of going in the wrong place, and not that there's a bunch of water that's been leaking all year, which is what I thought, honestly, it was. So, anyways, okay, so just know that. So that's why the water's got to increase on those two. And then also, just so you know, too, the water thing, you'll see down at the water account, under the purchase order request, no invoice was insufficient appropriations, the $2,050 for southeastern equipment. So that's why we need to increase materials and supplies by the $4,000. So.
Can you repeat that?
So the reason why the 4,000's in there
Uh-huh.
is because we need additional appropriations for materials and supplies for the water fund. And it's $2,050 is what we need, but they requested the 4,000 because there's a few other things that they need to take care
under
of.
the water account. Okay.
So that'll check mark that one, and then this will check mark the other one too. Yeah. Any questions about those?
Looks good so far.
Okay. You need another minute or?
Yeah, just one. I
Yeah.
want to go to.
Yeah, you're fine.
I do have a question
Yeah.
on the outstanding for the stormwater management. Do you have any insight into, are these, it looks like there's outstanding encumbrances. Do you know if those are all going to be fulfilled?
We
Does
talking
that
about
come
the 51,000 for the emergency repair.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that up. I need to ask Jim about that, but I wasn't thinking that they were going to take all of that from the stormwater. I thought that they were going to use a general fund, like public lands and buildings or something out of the general fund to pay for that. So I'm not sure why they didn't, and I would expect that I'm not sure why that's sitting in stormwater management. I mean, normally that activity we do pay for out of stormwater management because we never have money in the general fund to fix the stormwater system. So anytime that we have ever been able to make improvements, it's always come from that stormwater fund because that's a dedicated source of revenue. But honestly, they should probably be paying for that out of the general fund if they needed to. Doesn't make sense to me, but I will ask about that and find out what the plan is, what their plan is for it. And then we'll need to have another finance committee meeting in 2 weeks, and I'll talk about that too in just a moment. So I'll make sure that we bring that back up.
Stevenson, you said that was Fund 62, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me see what the cash balance is. Yeah, and the fund is like, there is less cash balance in the fund than there are appropriations. So, and maybe there's still revenue that's going to come in there. I don't exactly know how that revenue hits, but long story short, it's not that 51,000 won't be able to come out of the stormwater management fund. So yep, I will definitely ask a good catch on that one. I'll ask the auditor what the plan is on that. And so in the way just usually the way that these things get segmented into whichever fund, like this specifically is saying that Fund 62 is where that should come from. It's usually from the purchase order from the people filling it out. So potentially whoever filled it out didn't know that that fund was in that much negative. So a lot of times what will happen is the auditor's office will then reach back out to them and say, hey, would you rather pay for it out of this other fund or pay for it out of the general fund or what have you, if there's places available. Any other questions about the 2019 appropriations? Okay. So for the 2020 appropriations, so I'm not going to read all these out, but we'll make sure that this gets posted online too. So basically, so 2020 appropriations looks like this. It has, there's like 6 or 7 pages, and it essentially matches the financial recovery plan. So everything that we have in the financial recovery plan that was approved, it basically matches it like line by line from that. So there are definitely changes that need to be made in appropriations for 2020. Like, I mean, these are not the perfect appropriations, and especially with the new administration coming in, you know, there's always going to be changes when it comes to staffing or what have you. But to set them initially, we have to set them at the financial recovery plan level. So just keep that in mind. So if you want to, you know, take these home or review that with, you know, review the financial recovery plan, what have you. I do think that we should just have one reading of this tonight when we get to the council meeting for the 2021. And then that way it's still, like, there's no rush on it. So we don't need it until 2020. So it's good to go there. And essentially, and just so everybody knows too, so the financial recovery plan is to be updated at least once a year, and the last time we updated it was like March 26th. So by the end of March, the next the next administration will have to propose a plan, hopefully much earlier than the end of March, because somehow it just never happens. But I think we'll insist more boldly next time to make sure that we have more time to review the plan. But anyways, long story short, though, is that it'll have to get updated in the first quarter of next year. So, you know, there's changes that have to be made. There's lots of stuff that could be improved in it that we can, maybe the next mayor wants to make a service director and a safety director. Maybe we definitely know we need to hire a full-time health commissioner, because the way that we're doing it right now is not sustainable, and that it won't be available to us very soon after the beginning of next year. So we'll have to find 70, 80, 90, I don't know how much a health commissioner makes, but we'll have to find money for a health commissioner at some point. So keep that in mind as well. But all of that will be put into the new financial recovery plan. So yeah, question?
Yes, thank you. Just a point of clarity, I understand what you're saying about the need to pay for the health commissioner role. Are you saying that role needs to be created for the March 2020 recovery plan, or for this 2020 budget?
No, for the recovery plan. Like we can't put, even if we want to, we can't put it in here yet.
I just want to make sure that was clear.
Yeah.
Two different things.
Great call out. So, you know, and on a note of that, like, it will be exciting, because I've had somebody today was reaching out to me about, like, really frustrated because there was a dead animal essentially in the yard next to their house, right? And it'd been there for a couple of days. I told them, just call non-emergency police and see what they can do. It was a Saturday. I was like, I don't know, maybe there's something they can do. The officer came out and talked to him, and it's like, no, there's nothing we can do. Contact the health department. And, you know, the health department was contacted today. Although not just about that issue, there was another issue as well. And it's very hard for people. There's a lot of disconnect right now between, you know, who does what, it seems like, when it comes to enforcement of, like, trash on. There's a bunch of construction debris on a roof on a house too in a neighborhood, and somebody wanted to report it. And it's like, there's just issues when it comes to whose responsibility is it? How do we follow up? What if the owners in Las Vegas? I mean, we can't just go to Vegas and arrest them and bring them back here and charge them with the criminal code. So having a full-time health commissioner too will be, I think they'll be able to help us with some of that kind of stuff, and also, you know, just provide better management, I guess, of the health department. I mean, there's probably a lot of opportunity that we're not going after because everybody in the health department is so busy, because they're so stretched. They don't, you know, they used to have a lot more people. If you go in there, you'll see. So lots of empty rooms, or rooms that are now used for storage. So it'll be nice to, like I said, have that position filled again, I think. So sorry about that tangent. So, but yeah, the 2020 appropriations are here. So I'm going to recommend that we just do a one reading at council. For the 2019 ones, though, because of the urgency of getting this, ensuring that we get the water bill paid, and the late fee on that water bill, because it's so big. I mean, we hundreds of thousands of dollars every month, right? It's the city's collective water that we're buying. It's like $6,000 or $7,000 in late fees. So if we don't make our payment on time. So we really have to make sure we make it on time. So I am going to recommend, if there's no objection, that we do 3 readings of the council meeting tonight of the 2019 ones. It's intentionally, well, I wouldn't say intentionally, but we could have added more things to the 2019 ones because they're going to be more. We'll have to do at least one more 2019 appropriations changes because there's certain keys that are in the negative, there's certain keys that are not. So at some point before the end, we'll have to do it, but we'll have more time to kind of deliberate on that, I would say. So it is, like I said, kept a little bit more narrow on purpose there.
Do we have a sense of when the auditor would be back and maybe able to join that second meeting?
He should.
Or the next meeting?
I'm hoping that he is at the next meeting. So the next meeting, the primary focus of the next meeting, and actually let's talk about that too. So we've got we've got people that have submitted. So basically, essentially, there's ways that if somebody feels like the city owes them something, like maybe one example that I've seen is that somebody said they had dirt in the water, that the water was dirty, and that it caused all their white clothes in their washer to be brown. Like, people can file a claim against to the city. Like, instead of suing us, they can say, hey, you know what, this first step, I just want the city to know that they owe me, and I'm going to file a claim, essentially. They kind of do it through the law department or the clerk of council's office, and they provide their justification, their receipt, what have you. Well, the law department and I have been going back and forth over the past couple of months about who really should be dealing with these, and it's essentially, I've been told that the finance committee has always traditionally dealt with it. And so at our next meeting, which will be 6 o'clock before the next council meeting, we will have claims against the city that we will be talking about, and we'll have people here that will be talking to us about why we should be approving their claims. And the law department will give us a recommendation, from what I've heard, on whether we should approve or not approve, or at least give us some indication about whether the city could be liable. But it's really going to be our call as the finance committee to adjudicate. I use the word adjudicate, and the law department keeps telling me that that's not what you're doing. But because I don't see it. Again, there's some disagreement here. And God love them. I don't necessarily. I didn't sign up to be a judge. But they're.
In your if I may ask a question, in your conversations with the law department and the reference to the historically, this is what this committee has done. Is this a practice that was picked up? Is there an ordinance that directs these to us? Why? Do you have any understanding of why that was the practice?
Yeah. Oh, I think. The big understanding, the big thing though, was at the time when Mr. Moore was on council. He was on he chaired finance committee for some years. Essentially, there was no money to be had, so the finance committee always just said no, no, no to everything that came through. There was no way to pay anything. Well, and that's, I guess that's why they've done it. But there is an ordinance in place that directs the auditor and the law director that if they get together and there's a claim for $250, this was passed in the 70s, $250 or less in 1970s dollars, right? That the auditor and the law director, if they feel like it's a valid claim, they can deal with it. Well, I've proposed that to Keith that, hey, maybe we should just raise that amount, right, to a modern day number. That would make sense because, in my opinion, part-time elected council members that have no law experience really shouldn't be deciding, and what could we, where we could get sued, where we couldn't, should we pay it, should we not? It really should just be people that know that. So, anyways, long story short about it is that, I think it's been a tradition, or it's been something that's been passed down. It's not this is probably the thing that I'm looking forward to least of all the things that I have to do on finance committee. I'm not going to lie to you.
How many potential claims do we have to deal with?
I think there's 3 or 4.
Okay. I wasn't sure it was 20.
35.
Yeah. Couldn't be here all the rest of our life.
Yeah, and I think there's only one pothole claim, and apparently this person is calling the city every day. And so, we'll have to and there's also things that are complicating this because Public Works does not keep good records of when potholes are reported and when they're filled. So as long as a pothole is filled within 14 days of when it was reported, then we're in the clear in the sense that the city's not liable. And what I'm saying is that if a pothole is never reported to Public Works and they didn't technically they weren't told about it. And then if there's an injury, not an injury, but if somebody hits a pothole and hits a tire or whatever, the city's not liable for that because they didn't have, it wasn't reported. And because Public Works doesn't keep good records, that will complicate our matters. So I wanted to get you all aware. If you have specific questions, you can reach out to me. Like I said, I'm being 100% honest. It's not my favorite task that we'll have to do, but I did tell Tim Gary that we will take it on. And oh, hey, Mr. Gary, there is. And we'll take it on, and we will address these claims in our next meeting. So again, 6 o'clock. It'll be February 26th.
I'm sorry, what?
Sorry, November 26th. Excuse me.
Okay.
Thank you. So I think though, just keep in mind, or just so everybody has advance warning, I do not know if we're going to televise that meeting, or at least we may not televise. We might have 2 separate finance committee meetings. I don't know if it's going to be. I mean, there's small claims, but I don't know how appropriate it is to televise it. I'll
Agreed.
talk. Yeah. So, but it'll definitely be open to the public, so anybody can still come and listen. If somebody wants to live stream it, I mean, what have you. So. Just keep that in mind, and we'll see. I mean, I'm working on, like I said, I've gotten conflicted recommendations on that part, so I'll let you all know what happens. But yeah, is there anything? So we've got the 2 appropriations ordinances we're going to push through, or we're going to forward to the full council. Is there any other items that we need to discuss? Okay. Hearing none, yeah. So we'll reconvene in 2 weeks, and yeah, I'll see you all at the council meeting. Thanks so much.
Thank
Good job.
you.